Excellent. It's so good to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Thank you, Joe. It's an honor.
So let's begin our journey into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging. So many things were changing in our world and our lives. How did you survive the pandemic of 2020, and how has it influenced the way that you do things now in 2025?
Oh, what an interesting question. I'm an immigrant and I have always felt at home in the United States. And next month, actually, it will be 30 years since I'm in the United States.
Wow.
During the pandemic, I found out, I discovered, and I understood and I internalized that I am actually in a foreign country. Because that's when people connected only to those who are blood relatives or very, very close friends. And mostly about blood relatives. So basically, I not having anybody at the time, I was alone most of the time. And they say that there are times in our lives when we feel like we've lost everything and we don't know how to continue forward. And that's what happened to me. Um, yeah, so I kind of like had about a year and a half in which I felt like I was walking through a fog, not even walking in through a fog, just staying in a fog. So it was probably one of the most difficult periods of my life. What did it change to answer the question more directly? What did it change? Um, well, it taught me how to be alone and to make that beneficial for me.
Yeah.
And also to understand how much I need blocks of time that are uninterrupted. Because right now, I'll speak for myself, but I suspect it's true for other people too, that our time is frittered by demands, and doing all this dribble in minutia practically prevents us from actually tackling the big goals of our lives.
Yeah. It was quite an existential fork in the road. I think a lot of us reshape focuses on what's important. I think human beings probably need that every once in a while to have that kind of mirror in our face. Um, so, as a writer, as a poet, as a creator, I'm curious what you do on a daily basis. And to get to that answer, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's career day. And one of the kids is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that child?
I manage time for a living, and I try to figure out within every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes, or every half an hour, what do I have time for and what can I squeeze within? So that's my main job, to manage time. And then I have to bring into existence whatever is facing me. And that really doesn't work for 12-year-olds, does it?
Well, they would understand managing time, I think. And I think sometimes these younger kids understand things on a deeper level. I think things have advanced enough. Um, so, what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? When you were a kid, what was your dream?
I wanted to be a writer. I
Okay.
knew when I was 8 years old that actually I want to be a poet. And that's kind of like what has happened to me after, some scenic route tours I have. Right now, I'm spending 80% of my waking time with poetry, whether I write it, whether I uh, edit it, whether I publish it. I have a poetry press that has published over 100 books, whether I promote it, whether I schedule events. So basically, whether I sell it or ship it. So I do poetry all the time. So that's my life. And I knew it However, I didn't go straight for what I want. I just took a few detours. And I think that happens to many people.
That's the nature of poetry. It's all about detours.
It's about detours, about subtleties, and about leaps.
Yeah,
And kind of like having the reader make connections between two important things and skip over the details, I guess.
yeah. So who was the poet? Who was the first poet that really enamored you, or the first writer that made you think, I want to do that as well?
Well, these were poets and writers in Bulgaria, writing in Bulgarian, because at the time I didn't know any other languages. Um, I would say that my very first poet that I loved was someone called Ivan Metodiev. And it's a pity that nobody has translated him into English, and maybe I will, but I loved his poems so much that I kept on writing them down by hand and I knew them by heart. And at some point, when I met him, and I couldn't believe that actually he's sitting on the next table, my tears started running down my face. And it was amazing that I felt like I have met, I feel like that was a spiritual experience, being surprised by meeting my favorite poet.
So talk to me about your journey to America. Was it always a dream of yours to come to America?
Well, my dream was to run away from home. And that was the opportunity that presented itself to me. And turned out that it's pretty far away to run away from home, to go to the other end of the world. But what happens is that wherever you run away to, you actually take yourself with you, right? What was the expression? Wherever you go, there you are. So, certain things that you have to deal with no matter where you live, but other things, it is wonderful to be able to avoid. I mean, isn't it wonderful to go to a place where nobody knows you and to reinvent yourself? I don't know if it sounds wonderful to everybody of your listeners, but uh, and it actually didn't feel great at the time. But I am so glad that I did it because to immigrate means to develop another brain, another personality, and to make a new decision about absolutely everything you do, everything you like, um, everything you are, really.
So talk to me a little bit about inspirations, heroes. I mean, coming to a new country, persisting, evolving, loving something like poetry that you know you're not getting in anything lucrative, you're doing it from the soul. Who has been that inspiration for you that's allowed you to evolve into yourself and to find your voice?
Joe, I don't think I had a choice, really.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes in order to be yourself, in order to even survive your life, you gotta do what you are. Not so much you gotta do what you have to do, because to do what you have to do, it will always be in front of you. It will always be on your to-do list. But you gotta do what you are. Otherwise, it's kind of like this zombified existence. So I came to the United States and I felt that I was living this life that wasn't me. Um, and what do? I do what all Americans do. I work, right? So, and it's difficult, and I feel like something is missing. And what do I do? What many Americans do. I work even more so that there is no time for me to think about not doing the things that I want to be doing and the things that I am, right? So So what do I do next? I continue working. I continue just not having any days off or uh, just trying to get rid of free time because at the time I would get depressed on my days off. Why? Because they're not jam-packed with something to do, and it gives you time to think. And when you're walking in the wrong direction and you get some time to think, just things sneak through, and then you can't really pretend that you didn't hear them. So at some point, I crashed because you can just speed up only so much, right? And then when I crashed, then I lost motivation for work. I lost motivation to keep on doing what I was doing because I knew and I couldn't deny anymore that's not working for me. And when that happened, I had some space. And then that space, and that changed everything for me. I felt the joy of creation, and I physically felt how my body changed, that I was returning back into myself. And I could no longer make the same choices. I had to make a different choice. So I ended up quitting my job, going back to school to teach myself, to have other people teach me, to get an MFA, to learn how to write in English. And that uh, period was very important to me because people would say, hey, what you gonna do? Are you gonna teach? Are you gonna? And I said, I don't know. I don't know, but it's going to show up within the next 2 years. And it did. By the time I graduated from my MFA, I had a radio show. I had a book published. I was running a poetry group, and uh, the first two books of my literary press were announced to be published. So my entire life changed once I came back to who I am.
What was the first poem or the first piece of writing that you showed somebody where you got a reaction and you felt like you were doing what you were called to do?
I think I was a teenager at the time. I think I was a teenager at the time, and I think it was a love poem. And somebody else read it and said that, um, do you know what you've written? So that was the question. And then I guess I asked myself that question, well, do I know what I've written? And I really didn't have an answer for that. I still don't. And it's like, well, I just can't think too much about that. I just write it. And if it feels, I write it, but it has to feel 100% true to me. And it has to feel 100% right. Otherwise, if you mix poetry with pose, Pose, or anything that is impure, then I don't know, it loses pretty much everything to me.
Yeah. You know, what is it about poetry that you love? I mean, it's really about what you say. You're getting to the specifics, you're cutting out the gray area, the area in between. At the end of the day, poetry has to be one of the most popular forms of writing that people engage in, but it's on an economic level, it's one of the least popular. It doesn't sell as well as others, right? So
Yes.
my question to you, and I'm a poet too. I just got my first book published last year. I understand this process. So, and I've been doing it for a long time and I love it. I've always loved it. But what is it about poetry that has impelled you to always continue and to want to do it every day?
It is the fastest way I know to make me a better person. It is the fastest way to resolve an internal problem for me. And it's the fastest way for me to connect to myself. And I don't want to live anymore in a way that I'm disconnected from myself. I mean, that's hell. That's my description of hell. But now I'm all sorts of curious about you and your poems. Tell me about your book.
It's called The American Enigma Is You. I've been writing for a long time, and I finally last year got together a collection, and there's a local publisher in Kansas City called Sparrow Press. And I reached out. I have a good friend that was a poet laureate in Kansas for some years and kind of asked him for some ideas. And he recommended, and we went through the process, and it's been really, really cool. So, um, but I've always thought that poetry is almost like a version of therapy. Like I hear people that keep journals, and I've never been a journal guy, kind of that kind of thing, but I've always written poetry. And poetry, when you write it the right way, is always going to be the deepest reflection of what's inside of your soul. In itself,
I agree. Yeah,
it's an artistic interpretation of a journal.
I agree. Or as in many people's cases, it's the usable portion of a journal because
Right.
that's what I do. I journal. I have several little journals, and then I harvest them. That's the term that I use. I harvest the journals, and from that point on, um, from whatever is usable, I see what I can make. And some of it, it's already poems, and some of it needs a little bit of work. Some of it needs a lot of work. But also, I can see where I am and what else is similar to where I am. Normally, the journals from like 2, 3 years in a row can uh, are enough for a book.
Yeah. What made you decide to publish? Because that has to be a hard business.
My poems or publishing books?
Publishing books.
Okay. Well, Accents Publishing, um, Joe, just when I told you that, just as I told you that I had no choice in whether I write or not, I feel like I didn't have a choice for this one too. It was something that I felt like it was on my path, and I could have said no, but yeah, I wouldn't be true to myself. And I wanted to be part of the literary life, and wanted to create a platform for other people, just like I had done the previous year with my radio show. So uh, I was interviewing writers, having this radio show called Accents. I still do. Right now, it's a podcast, uh, but then when I decided to start a press, then I called it Accents Publishing, independent press for brilliant voices. And I felt more confident to publish poetry because that's what I knew best. And that's what I felt like I can make good choices. Um, and that was, you're asking me about what made me do that. It wasn't even a question that I had to say, how do I make money with that? That wasn't at all part of the equation. I didn't want to lose any,
Sure.
but it didn't really matter if the press makes a dime. And the first 10 years, actually, nobody took any money out of it. Basically, nobody got paid the first 10 years. So the first 10 years, Accents is 15 right now. I never paid myself a salary or anything.
Yeah.
After that, that was the change from the pandemic. After that, I had to start figuring out how to make a little bit of money to pay my bills during the pandemic. And
Yeah.
from that point on, actually, that helped us change certain things to make the press more sustainable. But we have published probably by now like 120 books,
Wow.
and a lot of them are poetry books. We are about to have a open reading period in November and December, and we want to read every kind of genre, every kind of book, so that we can come up with our catalog for 2027.
Of everything that you've accomplished in your life, from coming to America, all of the evolution as a writer, everything, all of the poets you published, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
My son. I'm the proudest of my son, who elected to li- live the life of an artist and went directly for it. He went to art school, he uh, got a job, he's an animator. So he got various jobs in different animation studios in New York City and other places. And now he started his own YouTube channel in which he puts his own animations. So that's what I'm most proud of.
So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, all of the poets that you publish, all of your fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, if you ask me different days, I'll tell you different things. I
Sure.
mean, I have a array of personalities that, depending on who is in charge at the time, would give you a different answer. The one that you're talking with right now would be the one who said earlier, who I mentioned earlier, the one who manages time. If you ask me when I'm tired, what's my perception of me? I would say someone who's overworked. Uh, if you ask me when right after I have written a great poem, I will tell you that my perception of me is someone who's been born to create. So I would say my perception of me is that I'm multifaceted.
I get it. So if you could sit down with one living poet right now, or even if you could sit down with the ghost of a poet that you've loved, and you could just talk to them, what poet would you love to hang out with?
Probably the poet Sappho,
Yeah.
because people are fascinated by her fragments, and I would ask her to read to me or tell to me a poem of hers in its entirety. And I would want to ask about all sorts of things. And as for a philosopher, I would want to talk to Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah. Do you have a poem right now that you could read to me?
Yeah.
I would love for you to hear one of your poems and to hear you read it.
Yes. Do you have a preference for a thematic or?
I just whatever your heart thinks makes sense right now. I would just love to hear one of your poems.
Okay, I'll read to you a poem that is kind of old, but it also shows it also illustrates some of the things that we spoke about earlier. So, the apple who wanted to become a pine cone, an interview. Question. I can see why a pine cone would wish to be an apple, but it is less obvious why an apple would want to be a pine cone. Why do it? Answer. Well, maybe I would like having hundreds of arms. Maybe I would enjoy letting air reach the rope of my core. Maybe I want to resemble a fish and a tree at the same time. Is that so difficult to believe? Question. Is there anything you would miss about being an apple? Answer. No, I am tired of being sweet, round, and shiny. I no longer want to smell good. I hate being food for humans. It bugs me when they look at me and salivate. I am tired of keeping their stupid doctor away, and I am afraid of worms. Question. How will you go about turning into a pine cone? Answer. First, I'll elongate. Then I'll shrink at the waist. Then I'll develop scales and produce a seed for each. I'll dry up and turn brown, my favorite color, and I will fall far, far from the tree.
Wow. I love that. That
Thank,
that's the kind of stuff that I love to read, that I love to get into. It's totally logical, it's metaphorically grounded. It's a little bit esoteric in a very wonderful way. It's just something you never think about. For me, the poet that I would love to talk to would be Billy Collins. There's a way
oh,
that
cool.
that he kind of takes these everyday ideas and just makes them magnanimous, which is the beauty of this vocation of being a poet, is plucking. Like, I feel like poets are the ones that have somehow found a way to stop and really smell the roses and the flowers and to look inside of that flower beyond the scent and notice something, like the pine cone, like the
Yeah.
apple. Um, that's amazing. So if anybody wants to pick up your work, they want to pick up the wonderful work that you're publishing, any of the good business in your world, where do they go?
So I would love if your listeners look up the books that I wrote. The one that I wrote, read from is Between a Birdcage and a Birdhouse, that was published by the University Press of Kentucky. And then The Poet's Guide to Publishing, How to Conceive, Arrange, Edit, Publish, and Market a Book of Poetry. I have worked for 10 years on that book and I have put in it everything I know. And then Accents Publishing is very easily findable on the internet and all our catalog is there, and we have wonderful books for poetry lovers and beyond.
I love it. What an illuminating, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for reading that poem. I'm so glad that you did that. That was totally cool. I loved it.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great. Thank you.